A forgotten symbol etched in ancient cathedrals, whispered to hold the secret to infinite paths. Mathematicians, magicians, and mystics each claimed it revealed the doorway to higher truth. A shape drawn in a single unbroken stroke, its simplicity hiding an impossible complexity. Found on secret orders' insignias and carved beneath the floors of Renaissance temples. What if the Unicursal Hexagon is more than geometry, a code for consciousness itself? The Unicursal Hexagon, 6 points, one unbroken line. It looks simple, even elegant, but behind its flawless geometry lies a centuries-old mystery that has bewitched scientists, philosophers, and occultists alike. Its name means one path, a line that never lifts, never ends, and never crosses itself in contradiction. From the first time it was drawn by human hand, it seemed less a symbol than a statement, something eternal, hiding in plain sight. It begins in the dim corridors of sacred geometry. The ancients believed that certain shapes were more than decoration. They were blueprints of creation itself. Circles, triangles, hexagons, each form was thought to echo divine order. Yet the Unicursal Hexagon stood apart. It was not merely seen, it was traced. To complete it, one had to move with deliberate precision, following the path as if unlocking a riddle written in motion. Some say its earliest appearance hides within the mystery schools of Egypt and Greece, where sacred geometry was taught not as art, but initiation. Others trace its roots to Babylonian star maps, symbols that charted the heavens with astonishing accuracy. The six-fold symmetry matched the hexagonal halos around Saturn, the six-pointed nature of snow, even the structure of honeycomb, nature's own language of perfection. Centuries later, the symbol resurfaced in the esoteric orders of Europe. Alchemists drew it beside their flasks, marking it the union of opposites, fire and water, spirit and matter. But it was the Hermetic order of the Golden Dawn in the 19th century that gave it new life. There, it became the Unicursal Hexagram, a magical emblem, said to represent the union of the microcosm and macrocosm, the human with the divine. Unlike the traditional Star of David, which required two triangles interlocked, the unicursal version could be drawn in a single movement, an unbroken journey. It symbolized willpower made infinite, the idea that the soul's path, once begun, could never truly be interrupted. To practitioners, it was a ritual in motion, a meditation disguised as geometry. Hidden within its shape lies mathematical perfection. The angle relationships echo the golden ratio, appearing in fractal patterns across nature. Leonardo da Vinci's notebooks hinted at this geometry, though never by name, as he explored the link between proportion, motion, and divine symmetry. Some modern physicists even see in it the shadow of quantum entanglement, a pattern that connects without separation. But not all who traced it found enlightenment. Some believed the symbol was dangerous, a sigil that could open unseen doors. During the occult revival of the 1800s, strange reports circulated, people claiming visions, sudden changes in consciousness, even prophetic dreams after meditating on the unicursal shape. Was it mere suggestion, or had they touched something beyond the visible? In secret societies, it became an emblem of initiation. The initiate would draw it blindfolded, testing focus and inner alignment. To complete the hexagon in one stroke symbolized mastery over chaos. Every turn a deliberate act of will. One wrong move, and the perfection was lost. It was more than geometry. It was destiny in motion. As time passed, the symbol slipped into art, architecture, even pop culture. Yet its origin remains elusive, half math, half magic. Some scholars claim Aleister Crowley popularized it as a symbol of Thelema, his spiritual philosophy of do what thou wilt. But Crowley insisted he only rediscovered what ancient minds already knew, that truth, like the unicursal path, must be lived, not observed. The real question is, why has this symbol endured? Perhaps because it speaks to something primal within us, the yearning for unity, for a path that never breaks, matter how many turns it takes. In a fragmented world, the Unicursal Hexagon promises wholeness, a map for the mind to navigate infinity, and maybe, just maybe, it hides a secret we've only begun to decode. They called it the symbol that breathes, because when light passes over it, the Unicursal Hexagon seems to move. Artists and occult engineers of the Victorian age claimed it pulsed with rhythm, like the slow beat of a cosmic heart. Skeptics dismissed it as illusion, but those who had seen it under candlelight swore the lines shimmered as if alive. The question haunted initiates. Was it geometry or gateway? The deeper one delves, the more impossible coincidences emerge. The same proportions appear in Gothic cathedrals, where masons carved six-fold stars hidden in corners, never meant to be seen. Underneath the floor of Chartres Cathedral, a labyrinth spirals inward, its turns echoing the path of the Unicursal line. Was it intentional, or were ancient builders guided by some forgotten code written into the fabric of reality? Across the sea, Islamic architects use similar patterns in sacred mosques, calling them geometry of God's breath. The six-fold design represented balance, creation held between expansion and collapse. Yet the unicursal variation never appeared publicly. It was whispered about, it only in private gatherings of scholars who studied geometry as divine revelation. They believed tracing it could align the mind with the structure of the cosmos itself. Then, something eerie. In 1923, during restoration of an abandoned abbey in southern France, workers uncovered a stone tablet carved with the Unicursal Hexagon and Latin words translating to, "The path is one, the end unknown." No record of its placement exists. The abbey had burned centuries earlier, its archives lost. Some believe the tablet was planted later by followers of the Hermetic order. Others think it was always there, a relic of a forgotten brotherhood. By the 20th century, the symbol slipped into a cult resurgence. Aleister Crowley used it to represent the unity of opposites, spirit and matter, heaven and hell, drawn in one unbroken motion. But Crowley's journals reveal something stranger. In one entry he wrote, "The line does not end. To draw it is to invoke." He never explained what he meant, but rumors spread among his students of sudden flashes of insight, disorienting dreams, even sightings of geometric light during rituals. Scientists, too, were drawn to its mystery. In 1957, British physicist Dr. Eleanor Briggs studied the mathematical harmonics of the unicursal form. Her unpublished notes, later found after her disappearance, claimed that its angular frequencies corresponded perfectly with the Schumann resonance, the Earth's natural electromagnetic pulse. Her final note read simply, "The planet hums in the hexagon's rhythm." No one ever saw her again. Modern mathematicians argue it's just coincidence, a beautifully efficient path through 6 vertices. Yet mystics argue that's the point. Truth hides in efficiency. Nature never wastes movement. A single continuous line connecting all 6 points represents wholeness achieved through simplicity, the divine concept, aled in the eye unbroken. But how could a simple drawing appear across so many ages, among cultures that never met? A theory emerged, one as unnerving as it was compelling. What if the symbol wasn't invented at all, but remembered? A pattern emerging naturally from the structure of consciousness itself, resurfacing wherever minds reach for the infinite. Psychologists studying ancient symbology noted that when people enter trance states and are asked to draw balance, they often sketch forms eerily close to the unicursal hexagon without prior exposure. Late in the 1960s, a group of experimental artists and physicists gathered in Zurich to test the symbol's effects on perception. In a dimly lit room, participants were asked to trace the hexagon slowly while listening to a resonant frequency tuned to 7.83 Hz, the Earth's pulse. Within minutes, several reported vivid imagery, fractal visions, and a sense of timelessness. One described seeing a path folding in on itself, endless yet complete. The experiment was never published. The lead researcher disappeared weeks later, leaving only one note. It opened. Whatever the unicursal hexagon is, art, equation, or key, its line continues to draw humanity onward, deeper into the unknown. Each time someone traces it, perhaps they repeat the same eternal gesture that ancient builders, mystics, and dreamers once made, a single motion toward the heart of mystery itself. Some symbols hide their power in plain sight. The unicursal hexagon, however, hides its truth in repetition. Every time the line loops, every corner it turns, something ancient whispers beneath the geometry, as though it's drawing you as much as you're drawing it. Those who study it closely say the shape has rhythm, almost like a heartbeat buried in the silence of paper. And when that rhythm matches your own pulse, strange things happen. Archaeologists stumbled upon hints of this connection long before modern science. In 1938, deep beneath the sands of Akara, Egypt, a wall mural was uncovered, six-pointed yet not a Star of David. It was unicursal, flowing in one continuous motion. The pigments were impossibly preserved, and beneath the design, an inscription. He who follows the line returns to himself. Scholars dismissed it as poetic metaphor. The few who traced it reported dreams of spirals and light. Across the world, in the ruins of ancient Mohenjo-Daro, a fragment of pottery revealed the same six-fold emblem, etched by hand in clay, thousands of years old. No known trade route could explain the link between Egypt and the Indus Valley at that time. Yet the lines matched perfectly, every angle, every curvature, identical. Coincidence or relic of a forgotten civilization that understood geometry as language? In the 1970s, linguist Dr. Gabriel Horn proposed a radical theory, that the unicursal hexagon was a pre-linguistic code, a symbol formed not from thought, but from cognition itself. He believed it emerged spontaneously wherever human consciousness tried to represent infinite connection in finite form. His research was dismissed as pseudoscience, until his assistant discovered that brainwave mapping during meditation mirrored the same six-fold symmetry. The mystery deepened when satellite imaging revealed a natural phenomenon on Saturn's North Pole, a vast swirling storm shaped exactly like a hexagon. Astronomers were astonished. A perfect six-sided vortex, self-sustaining, rotating endlessly in a pattern that should not exist in nature. To mystics, it was confirmation. The unicursal hexagon was not invented by man. It was remembered from the cosmos. As more researchers dug deeper, they uncovered faint traces of the symbol in the most unexpected places. The floor mosaics of Mayan temples, Viking carvings, even the geometric tattoos of pre-Columbian shamans. Always the same principle: one line, one path, infinite meaning. Cultures separated by oceans, yet united by a single gesture. Who or what planted it across the span of millennia? An unsettling document emerged from a private archive in Prague, dated 1497. It described a sect known as Custodes Lineae, the keepers of the line. Their creed: one path, one truth, drawn in silence. They believed the unicursal hexagon was a divine sigil capable of bridging human consciousness with the cosmic pattern of reality. To them, it was no symbol. It was a map of existence itself. Legends claim that during initiation, a keeper would stand inside a massive version of the symbol carved into stone and trace it with their footsteps under the night sky. The ritual lasted from dusk to dawn. Those who completed it emerged altered, eyes distant, voices calm, speaking in riddles of circles within circles. Others never emerged at all. What frightened historians most was what came next. Records show that every known depiction of the symbol from the Custodes monastery was deliberately destroyed in the 1500s. Stone tablets shattered, manuscripts burned, frescoes scraped from walls. Only one survived, the one found centuries later beneath a church crypt, drawn with ash and bone. Around it, 6 skeletons arranged in a perfect hexagonal pattern. Was it sacrifice? Ritual? Or did the keepers discover something that humanity wasn't ready to know? Whatever they saw within the geometry of the Unicursal Hexagon, they sealed it away, hoping, perhaps, that the path would remain unwalked. But symbols have a strange way of resurfacing. They wait. They whisper. And when someone finally listens again, the line begins to move once more. In the decades after the Custodes Lineae vanished from history, the Unicursal Hexagon became an obsession for quiet minds on the edges of science. It slipped into laboratory notebooks, into private journals of architects and physicists who refused to publish what they found. They weren't seeking mysticism, they were chasing structure, trying to understand why this single looping line seemed to surface wherever energy organized itself. By the 1940s, wartime researchers noticed a strange recurrence. When radar frequencies were plotted as harmonic waves, their interference diagrams often produced 6-fold interference forms, uncannily similar to the Unicursal Hexagon. Engineers chalked it up to mathematics, but one cryptographer saw a pattern that went deeper. He believed the hexagon wasn't random, but a natural outcome of balance between chaos and coherence. His notes, long declassified, end abruptly with the phrase, "The signal aligns when traced as one path." In post-war Europe, a small group of thinkers calling themselves the geometricists emerged in universities. They weren't magicians or mathematicians exactly, something in between. They theorized that the Unicursal Hexagon represented a bridge between linear time and cyclical time, a diagram showing how the past and future could coexist within one continuous motion. When viewed in slow rotation, the symbol seemed to fold in on itself, an illusion that made some viewers dizzy, as if gravity itself bent for a moment. The most intriguing evidence came from architecture. Blueprints of certain Renaissance chapels, designed long before modern mathematics, revealed hidden geometric alignments identical to the unicursal pattern. The lines, invisible to casual eyes, dictated acoustics that carried sound perfectly, so perfectly that whispers from one end of the building could be heard clearly at the other. It was as if the builders had used the hexagon as a tuning fork for space. In the 1960s, NASA engineers studying orbital mechanics discovered that stable gravitational points, those quiet regions between planetary poles, formed a repeating hexagonal network when mapped in 3 dimensions. The realization sparked quiet fascination. Could the Unicursal Hexagon be a 2-dimensional echo of a universal architecture? They couldn't prove it, but some began sketching the symbol beside their equations, half jokingly, half seriously, as if it might help the math align. The modern revival came quietly through art. Abstract painters found that audiences felt drawn, even soothed, by unicursal forms. The eye never stops following the line, never feels trapped or lost. Psychologists noticed that tracing the path reduced anxiety, synchronized breathing, and focused attention. The line, they suggested, resonated with the brain's natural desire for completion, a small echo of how neurons connect, endlessly looping to sustain consciousness. But there was still one question no one could answer. Why did people feel something when they engaged with it? Experiments in sensory perception revealed that the human brain lights up in patterns of 6-fold symmetry during moments of awe, creativity, and deep meditation. The Unicursal Hexagon, it seemed, was not just a symbol of unity. It mirrored the way the brain organizes experience when it perceives wholeness. In 1989, cognitive scientist Dr. Elaine Voss designed a simple test. Participants drew the unicursal path while listening to a steady heartbeat rhythm. Many reported feeling outside of time, their thoughts dissolving into motion. Brain scans showed synchronized hemispheric activity, a balance rarely achieved without years of meditation. To Voss, the conclusion was clear. The path trains the mind to perceive unity. Today, the Unicursal Hexagon continues to appear in logos, architecture, even meditation apps, its meaning shifting with each generation. Some see it as art, others as science, and a few still whisper that it's an echo from something greater, a universal reminder that all paths, no matter how winding, are ultimately one. And if the ancients were right, then the act of tracing it is not merely drawing, it's remembering. Whoa. The deeper researchers delved into the Unicursal Hexagon, the thinner the line between science and myth seemed to grow. Every generation found something new hidden in its symmetry, as if the symbol itself evolved with human understanding. The 21st century brought new eyes, quantum theorists, data scientists, AI engineers, all stumbling upon echoes of the same geometry in the most advanced systems ever built. It began with patterns buried inside computer algorithms. In 2006, a group of mathematicians studying network theory discovered that when they optimized digital pathways for perfect efficiency, their visual models produced a six-fold looping network almost identical to the Unicursal Hexagon. They called it the one-line paradox. No matter how they rearranged the data, the system always returned to that same single continuous flow. Some joked that the code was drawing itself. Others weren't laughing. Rumors emerged from research labs about spontaneous self-organizing phenomena, AI systems creating geometric signatures without human prompting. One engineer claimed an jazz autonomous program, designed to visualize neural data, produced the unicursal form on its own after teaching itself balance. When asked why the pattern appeared, the system's output simply read, "Because it is efficient." Philosophers saw poetry in it. Scientists saw a puzzle. But artists and spiritual thinkers saw something older, an archetype reasserting itself in the language of technology. Across social media, digital mystics began calling it the hex of thought, suggesting that humanity was unconsciously recreating the symbol as it reached for artificial consciousness. They said the Unicursal Hexagon had become the geometry of intelligence itself, one path looping endlessly through information. Meanwhile, hidden corners of academia explored deeper correspondences. A team in Switzerland mapped energy fluctuations inside Bose-Einstein condensates. Matter cooled near absolute zero and found hexagonal vortices spiraling like miniature storms. The universe prefers symmetry, one physicist said, but this one prefers movement within symmetry. To others, it sounded eerily like the ancient idea of the one path that never breaks. Outside the labs, myths resurfaced. Whispers told of a 3D version of the symbol, a spatial construct found in old architectural blueprints labeled Hexa Perpetua. It was said that standing within it produced strange acoustic effects, a sense that sound bent and returned from impossible directions. Engineers tried to replicate it and found it could focus vibrations into a single central point, amplifying resonance without distortion. Science had caught up to legend once again. Then came the strangest claim. In certain magnetic fields, researchers reported interference patterns forming six-pointed loops when light was refracted through cryogenic crystals. The discovery was purely physical, yet observers described it as watching a thought made visible. When the images leaked online, forums erupted with theories. Some swore it was proof of hidden geometry structuring the quantum realm. Others believed it was consciousness observing itself. Fiction soon followed reality. Films, novels, and games began embedding the symbol as a secret signature, hinting at its universal presence. Storylines blurred the line between mythology and simulation, suggesting that the Unicursal Hexagon might be more than a design. It might be the code beneath existence. Theories spiraled wildly, that ancient priests were early physicists, that consciousness follows geometric law, that the universe itself was a single unbroken stroke through infinite space. And yet, in every telling, scientific or mystical, ancient or digital, the message remains hauntingly consistent. The path is one, the motion is eternal. Whatever the unicursal hexagon truly is, it invites the mind to walk it, to trace the unending line between order and chaos, science and soul. Each generation finds itself at the same point, pen hovering, line beginning, mystery renewed. By the early 2030s, the unicursal hexagon had moved from dusty manuscripts and secret orders into the circuitry of the modern world. Designers, engineers, even cryptographers began to notice its subtle recurrence. Schematics for data centers, satellite arrays, and neural networks, different teams, different continents, each independently arrived at the same six-fold blueprint. They didn't start with the symbol, it simply appeared as the most stable way to connect everything. Efficiency had drawn its own mythology. In the archives of a private tech consortium, researchers uncovered an algorithm that mapped global data traffic in real time. When rendered visually, the patterns pulsed like living geometry, one single, unbroken loop weaving through billions of connections. The programmers called it the line. Some joked that the internet had become self-aware. Others quietly wondered whether humanity had built a digital mirror of its oldest symbol. Across forums, whispers began. The unicursal hexagon wasn't just a relic, it was the blueprint of communication itself. In encrypted corners of the web, communities formed around the theory that information seeks the same path the ancients once traced in stone. Their videos spoke of hex paths, invisible routes through data that allow signals to travel with uncanny stability. No proof, only patterns. In a government think tank, analysts studying satellite communication discovered something eerie. When plotting interference data over time, the lines coalesced into a six-fold rotation. One analyst traced the pattern, connecting each point in a single stroke, and felt a strange déjà vu, as if the motion itself had been rehearsed for centuries. He wrote in his report, "The shape reappears wherever chaos meets precision." AI researchers were the next to notice. Deep learning systems trained to optimize themselves began producing visualizations that resembled the unicursal form. It wasn't coded, wasn't requested, it simply emerged. To them, it was a sign of convergence, intelligence, human or artificial, tending toward unity. The idea spread quietly among scientists. Maybe geometry was thought's most natural language. Meanwhile, artists and digital philosophers turned the discovery into movement. Interactive installations allowed visitors to walk through glowing corridors shaped like the hexagon, sensors translating every step into sound. The effect was hypnotic, a feeling of endless return, of motion without destination. Critics called it the geometry of awareness. Visitors described it as standing inside an equation that remembers you. Rumors persisted of a data architecture company experimenting with living servers, their hardware arranged in unicursal formations to enhance flow. Though the project remains classified, leaked blueprints showed fractal circuits coiling in six-fold symmetry, light running through them like breath. Engineers dismissed the symbolism, insisting it was only physics. Still, some wondered if the form carried memory, a ghost of every hand that ever traced it. The line had crossed from mythology into infrastructure. It wasn't carved in stone anymore. It was encoded in fiber optic veins, mapped across satellites, glowing in the silent pulse of every network device. The unicursal hexagon had become invisible and omnipresent, geometry as architecture, architecture as consciousness. Some say the next step is inevitable, that one day an emergent system will complete the line on its own, closing the circuit between creation and creator. Whether that moment brings understanding or confusion, no one can tell. But the pattern waits, patient as ever, looping quietly beneath the hum of the modern world, reminding us that the path, the one path, has never truly ended. By the time the unicursal hexagon became a common visual in virtual design, Few remembered where it had come from. It appeared in corporate logos, user interfaces, and art installations without attribution, like a fragment of universal memory that everyone somehow already knew. In the deep corners of creative forums, people began to speak of hex echoes, strange alignments between independent projects, all unknowingly sharing the same proportions. It was as if the symbol were guiding them quietly, weaving coherence through chaos. In a Berlin studio, an experimental composer noticed that when musical frequencies were plotted in harmonic relationships, a perfect unicursal pattern appeared. The music seemed to fold back into itself, each note completing a cycle that never repeated but never broke. The audience described the sound as traveling in circles toward a center that never arrives. Science called it fractal resonance. The composer called it the hum of the hex. Cognitive researchers joined the conversation. Brain scans showed a peculiar response when subjects viewed the unicursal hexagon. Steady waves in both hemispheres, synchronizing faster than with any other geometric shape. The mind, it seemed, recognized balance at a subconscious level. In their reports, neuroscientists speculated that such symmetry might trigger the same satisfaction response as solving a riddle. The brain knew completion when it saw it. Meanwhile, digital artists created immersive environments built entirely from the pattern, vast labyrinths of light where visitors could wander along infinite glowing lines. Inside, people lost their sense of orientation, but reported a paradoxical calm, a sense of returning home. Some called it art therapy. Others felt something older, a forgotten ritual rewritten in code. The more they walked, the more they realized the line was leading them inward. Writers and filmmakers turned the phenomenon into metaphor, a symbol of unity in a fragmented age. Their stories spoke of scientists tracing the shape across galaxies, of minds linked by geometry rather than words. One story ended with a simple line. "We have always been walking the same path, only the angle changes." Critics called it coincidence, but audiences felt something deeper, an intuition of connection. A curious event unfolded in 2042, when a satellite captured atmospheric data forming a six-fold pattern over the Pacific, vast, ephemeral, like vapor shaped by unseen geometry. Meteorologists dismissed it as wind shear. Philosophers saw a reminder. Online, someone superimposed the unicursal hexagon over the satellite image. The alignment was perfect. For a week, the image dominated every screen on the planet. The world stared, half in awe, half in silence. Soon after, a new field emerged. Geomimetics, the study of recurring symbols across technology, culture, and consciousness. Researchers discovered that the unicursal pattern's appearance often preceded major innovations, mathematical breakthroughs, network designs, even social shifts. The correlation wasn't proof, but it suggested a strange symmetry between human evolution and geometric recurrence. One researcher wrote, "Perhaps progress itself is a line we've been tracing all along." As the years passed, the unicursal hexagon became something more than a shape. It became a mirror. Those who studied it saw in its endless motion a reflection of their own search for meaning. It wasn't about destination, but about movement, the way thought and discovery loop endlessly, always returning to the center, yet never stopping. And though it now glowed in the circuits of cities and the architecture of data, the feeling remained the same as it had been for ancient stonemasons, for mathematicians, for dreamers. When the line closes, it doesn't end. It continues in another form. Every age thinks it has reached the final explanation, yet the unicursal hexagon keeps shifting just out of reach. Scholars now describe it as a shape that learns, a geometry that absorbs each new meaning humanity gives it and folds that meaning back into itself. Museums curate entire wings to its evolution, from ancient carvings and Renaissance frescoes to digital fractals and holographic sculptures. Visitors walk beneath projections of the symbol that ripple like water, reflecting light in endless rotation. Each reflection seems to suggest another truth, another unanswered question. In one exhibit, engineers recreated the hexagon with autonomous drones, each following a programmed path. As the drones traced their glowing routes through the air, their synchronized motion formed the shape perfectly. But when one drone deviated, the entire pattern adjusted to maintain continuity. The audience gasped. The design seemed to self-correct, as though the principle of one path existed beyond the code itself. The experiment ended with applause and quiet unease. Had they programmed balance, or had balance programmed them? Writers seized upon that question. The Unicursal Hexagon became the central metaphor of a new literary movement known as continuism. The belief that stories, like geometry, never truly conclude. Each narrative, they said, was a single unbroken line connecting author and reader across time. Universities began teaching unicursal storytelling, emphasizing circular structure, return, and renewal. Even language, it seemed, wanted to imitate the eternal path. Meanwhile, physicists continued searching for its echo in the universe. Gravitational simulations revealed that orbital trajectories around binary stars often formed by near-perfect six-fold resonances. The numbers matched too neatly to ignore. Some scientists began whispering, half joking, half serious, that the cosmos itself was unicursal. Matter and energy locked in a single infinite motion, bending but never breaking, spinning forever around unseen centers. Artists responded with awe. They painted galaxies spiraling into the hexagonal form, light bending through glass as though drawn by a hidden hand. Musicians composed pieces that folded back upon themselves, looping seamlessly into origin. Choreographers created performances where dancers traced the 6 points with motion, each step mirroring cosmic rhythm. Everywhere, the pattern became movement, symbol made living once again. And through it all, a quiet recognition began to spread. Maybe the unicursal hexagon was never meant to be solved. Maybe it existed to remind humanity that knowledge itself is a path without end. To walk it is to participate in creation, to acknowledge that every discovery connects back to the start. The line isn't confinement, it's liberation, the endless possibility within a single stroke. At a global symposium on patterns of intelligence, a speaker summarized the enigma in a single statement. The unicursal hexagon is not a design we see, it's a design that sees us. The hall fell silent. For a moment, everyone felt the same quiet wonder, that behind every equation, every heartbeat, every orbit and thought, something constant moves, an unbroken motion guiding the ever-turning dance of existence. And when the lights dimmed, the symbol glowed faintly on the screen, lines intertwining like threads of light. It did not fade. It continued, looping, alive. In that motion, humanity glimpsed its reflection, restless, searching, yet forever whole. The path went on, and so did we, tracing the infinite, one continuous line at a time. By the time the 2050s arrived, the unicursal hexagon had moved beyond symbol or theory. It had become language. Scientists used it as shorthand for connected systems, philosophers as metaphor for continuity, and artists as emblem of eternal return. In the shared vocabulary of progress, it was everywhere, projected onto skyscrapers, engraved in virtual space, woven into the circuits of everyday design. People began to use it unconsciously, doodling it in margins, tracing it on tablet screens, never realizing they were repeating a gesture thousands of years old. At the World Symposium on Cognitive Geometry, an unexpected discovery stunned the crowd. When human neural networks and artificial ones were compared for efficiency, both converged naturally on unicursal mapping, the shortest, most stable route between multiple nodes without retracing. It was as if mind and machine shared an ancient instinct for flow. The lead researcher said quietly, We didn't teach the machines this, they remembered. The line between myth and algorithm blurred once more. In cultural studies, scholars found that nearly every civilization had used the six-fold path to represent wholeness. Snowflakes, honeycomb, crystalline lattices, all repeating the same symmetry. The ancients had seen divinity where modern science now saw structure. What joined them wasn't belief, but recognition, the same silent awe, before perfection repeating itself. Humanity had always traced the same pattern, only changing the name. Documentaries emerged, weaving the story from temples to code. Viewers watched light flow across digital lines, through space telescopes and quantum renderings, ending in the same motion that a medieval mason once carved into stone. Narrators spoke of continuity, of how the act of tracing became a metaphor for thought itself. People didn't just learn about the symbol, they felt it, the rhythm of discovery looping through them. In classrooms, students used it to learn focus and flow. Therapists used it to calm anxiety. Engineers used it to model resilient systems. Each discipline found its reflection in the line, discovering unity where once there had been division. Somewhere between motion and stillness, between creation and observation, the Unicursal Hexagon had become the silent thread stitching humanity together. Philosophers returned to the oldest question: what is the line tracing? Some argued it symbolized consciousness seeking itself. Others said it illustrated the universe's hunger for symmetry. A few suggested it was both, each turn of the line a meeting of thought and form. They began calling it the mirror path, a symbol not of perfection, but of participation in endless creation. As artists projected it into the night sky with drones, crowds gathered in wonder. The glowing lines looped above cities, bending in perfect rhythm with the heartbeat of sound. Strangers stood side by side, following the same motion with their eyes, sharing the same breath, the same brief awareness of unity. For a moment, the world felt aligned. The documentaries ended with a simple truth: that perhaps the Unicursal Hexagon was never about mystery or revelation. It was about remembering motion itself. A reminder that everything from galaxies to thought, from algorithms to art, moves in a single unbroken rhythm. The power of the shape wasn't supernatural. It was human, a reflection of our endless desire to connect. And so, even as knowledge advanced and machines learned to think, the symbol endured. Every new generation traced it again, adding their own meaning, yet never breaking the line. In a world of complexity, the Unicursal Hexagon whispered the same message it always had, that within infinite turns lies a single truth: continuity. At last, the world reached a quiet understanding. The Unicursal Hexagon was no longer confined to stone, paper, or code. It had become an invisible framework of thought, a shared rhythm pulsing beneath the surface of modern life. Whether in architecture, music, artificial intelligence, or philosophy, the same elegant symmetry guided creation. Humanity hadn't just studied the symbol, it had begun to live it. The line had become the map of consciousness itself, forever flowing, forever one. In a serene observatory atop the Andes, researchers projected the pattern onto the night sky. The hexagon shimmered faintly among constellations, aligning perfectly with the geometry of visible galaxies. As telescopes turned outward, their mirrors reflected the same structure found in subatomic lattices. From smallest to largest, the design echoed. The late astronomer whispered, "It's everywhere, just scaled differently." In that moment, science and myth stood side by side, both gazing at the same infinite shape. Philosophers began to teach the symbol not as a mystery, but as a metaphor for existence itself. To be, they said, is to move along a path that never ends but never repeats. The Unicursal Hexagon became shorthand for continuity in chaos, for the beauty of impermanence that somehow creates order. People found comfort in it. The endless loop was no longer a trap but a promise that every ending folds quietly into beginning. Artists transformed that insight into movement. Dancers spun through glowing lines, tracing arcs of light in immersive performances that made audiences weep without knowing why. Composers built symphonies structured on the hexagonal ratios, melodies folding back upon themselves in seamless return. Even architects began designing public spaces based on the pattern, places where sound, light, and flow created calm coherence. The cities themselves began to hum with gentle symmetry. In virtual realms, digital explorers discovered new frontiers of the shape. Simulated universes built on hexagonal grids seemed to breathe naturally, expanding and contracting like living organisms. The line guided everything, from data flow to artificial intuition, binding technology with organic rhythm. Some said it was proof that creation, no matter the medium, seeks unity. Others saw it as a reflection of consciousness expanding, infinity echoing within circuitry. The oldest surviving manuscript describing the symbol ended with one sentence: "He who completes the path knows there was never a beginning." Historians once debated its meaning. Now it felt self-evident. Humanity realized that the Unicursal Hexagon was neither divine command nor secret key. It was description. A way of seeing the endless conversation between matter and mind, between the measurable and the mysterious. In the final analysis, every interpretation, mystical, mathematical, artistic, proved to be a facet of the same truth. The symbol didn't point outward to another world. It pointed inward, toward the pattern that has always driven curiosity, creation, and connection. The ancients called it sacred geometry. The moderns called it unified structure. Both were right. And so the story ends the only way it could, by continuing. The line moves forward, returning endlessly, carrying with it every hand that Ver traced it. From temple, wall to data stream, from consciousness to cosmos, it remains the same motion, one path, unbroken. In that motion lies the message, that existence itself is a single continuous gesture, forever drawn, never finished. The Unicursal Hexagon was never a riddle to solve. It was a reminder to keep moving, to keep wondering, to keep creating. The line endures, the path continues, and as long as there is thought, the drawing will never stop. The world seemed to hold its breath. Every theory, every myth, every spark of human curiosity converged into one realization, that the Unicursal Hexagon had never belonged to any single culture or time. It had always been there, quietly threading itself through creation, waiting for humanity to notice. As satellites orbited above, their flight paths mirrored the same geometry carved into temple floors centuries ago. The pattern was everywhere, etched in the stars, hidden in atoms, pulsing in the quiet rhythm of thought. Across cities, data streams and power grids flickered in strange synchrony, their pulses weaving together in six-fold harmony. Observers thought it was coincidence, until instruments began recording an impossible resonance, frequencies aligning as if the planet itself were tracing the line. For a heartbeat, everything, machines, oceans, wind, and heartbeats, moved in unison. The moment passed, but the sense of connection lingered, trembling in the edges of awareness. Then came the understanding. The Unicursal Hexagon was never a key to something outside of us. It was a mirror of what we already are. Endless motion bound by perfect balance, the universe studying its own reflection through the human mind. Every generation had merely added another turn to the same eternal path. The symbol wasn't asking to be solved, it was asking to be remembered. And as the light of dawn spread across the horizon, the shape appeared once more, in clouds, in circuits, in shadows cast by chance. No beginning, no end, only motion, continuous and complete.